Hey, everybody, and welcome to Making Sense with Dustin Lamontagne from Mackey Research Capital. My name is Bryn Griffiths. How you doing today?
Real good, Bryn. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. I'm not a big fan of the snow that is flying around today, but I also understand I live in Canada. I'd love to be able to get out of here. I'd love to be a snowbird.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to be.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
So do you want to talk about snowbirds today? Because there's obviously some tips if you're heading south to the U.S. and some other locations. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of clients that have properties down, especially in Phoenix and the Palm Springs area. So I thought maybe it would be a good topic to discuss, some tips around traveling south and property ownership down there, especially in light of the fact I read the other morning that the province of Ontario was going to stop covering some emergency out of country medical expenses. So this it's not a huge issue, but if you're looking at getting private insurance, probably going to bump the costs up anywhere from 8 to 10% is what analysts are estimating. So it's going to hurt in the pocketbook for those people that are going down more than 30 days. So to speak.
Well, millions travel to the U.S. every year, and the breakdown is what, maybe about half to Florida and half to Arizona, and maybe into California a little bit. Is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, essentially, from sort of Saskatchewan west, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, they tend to have a lot of properties in the Phoenix and Palm Springs area.
Yeah.
I think last count is about 500,000. And then from Manitoba east, it's Florida's the number one destination. So I think you've got about another 500,000 property owners in the state of Florida. Which, when I was doing a little bit of research for this podcast, I was quite surprised to find out there's over 1 million Canadians that have property in the Sunshine States.
Yeah, that's not 1 million people traveling to the U.S. That's 1 million people traveling to the U.S. because they have property.
Yeah, exactly. There's, millions more that just go and rent, of course. I think the number is somewhere in the 5 to 6 million range of permanent.
Wow.
Yeah, it's enormous, the amount of, and that's Canadians going south at all levels. Of course, they're also going to Mexico, and they're going to Texas and other places as well. So,
but those are the two big locations. Now, the one thing that every snowbird knows is the magic number is 183 days, right?
You bet. Otherwise, you cause yourself all types of tax problems.
What the IRS, and I know because I've got friends that go down there, the IRS are very careful and they watch that stuff really carefully. They know exactly how long you're in the U.S. for.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're careless and you end up in the U.S. longer than the 6-month allotment, you may have to end up filing a tax return with the IRS, which is not where the position you want to find yourself in. So you want to keep it under the 6-month range, and it doesn't have to be 6 consecutive months. It can be cumulative. You can go back and forth, but your total stay in the U.S. has to be under 183 days.
Are they thinking of changing that, extending it a little bit? I'd heard some stories.
Yeah, I read about a year ago that they were looking at maybe upping the amount of time to 9 months. Now, I haven't seen where that's got pushed through.
Right.
It seems to me there's a lot more pressing issues that our governments are focusing on. So I doubt that will ever get changed in the near future, but who knows?
Let's go back to the comment about Ontario and what they're thinking of doing with insurance. I'm guessing that it's vital that people get travel insurance anyway because you want to make sure that you're over-insured when you head to the U.S.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, myself personally, I've got coverage through a couple different credit cards that I use. So
yep.
That's one very inexpensive way. The RBC Avion card and I think the CIBC Aventura both have good out-of-country medical insurance up to 30 days. If you want to get private insurance, there's a number of different companies that you can purchase that insurance through. Manulife is one that comes to mind, who's very popular. I think RBC sells travel insurance right at the branches now. So make sure if you're going south, you have coverage, because if you get into a situation where even you get a broken leg in the U.S., you could be out $100,000. I've heard those kind of stories.
Wow.
So make sure you're covered. You don't want to go on holidays and have it turn out to be a financial disaster for you.
Hey, I want to touch on properties because I know some people who buy let's use Phoenix as an example, or Scottsdale. They buy a property because they want someplace that they can go to get away from this out there. And it's really their second home. But I also know people who purchase in those locations, and I know it's got to be in other locations as well, where the purchase is considered an investment first, more than it is a vacation property or a second home. How do you view it when we're talking about property as an investment?
Well, I think first and foremost, anyone buying a property in the Sun Belts is probably looking at it for leisure first and investment second. The costs are very expensive to have a property in another jurisdiction. Talk about Phoenix or Palm Springs. You've got the pool expense. You've got property taxes, utilities. So I think people underestimate that. And then you've got the ongoing maintenance, right? So what ends up happening is people will put their property into these rental pools. There's managers down in those Sunbelt cities that will manage the property and give you a little bit of rental income. Now, you have to be a little bit cognizant of there's, I believe it's a 30% flat tax for rental income on the U.S.
Okay.
So you really have to know the ins and outs. I always recommend anyone purchasing property, if they're going to have some income off that property, talk to a U.S.-based tax accountant that specializes in that area. I've got a couple contacts in that regard, so if anybody's out there that needs a name, I can certainly provide that to you.
Okay. One cost that comes up that Canadians are caught off guard by, and that is Americans in those locations, they don't heat their pools in the winter because the pool for them is someplace in the summer. In the winter, those pools are cold. So, of course, when Canadians go down there, they want to spend some cash, and they're very surprised at how expensive it can be in some places to heat a pool. So HOAs, they are going, well, we weren't expecting that. So there's all sorts of little things that can creep up, right?
Yeah, and aside from the expenses, like you mentioned, there's things like estate taxes. There's capital gains on property, when you sell it. So, and the United States has an inheritance tax. You really need to know the ins and outs, especially if you're getting a property. I think it's over $300,000 US in value, where you start to have issues. Now, don't quote me on that, but the rules change all the time.
Yep.
All the more reason to talk to a tax professional if you are looking at a property down in the U.S.
So once again, if somebody has some questions on this kind of thing, they're heading south either for fun, or maybe they're looking to purchase something, you can kind of direct them on things like that, right?
Yeah,
get them in touch with somebody.
Yeah, I've helped a lot of clients with their southern property purchases, whether it's referring them to a realtor or getting that tax or legal professional that they need. If you're just a regular snowbird going down for rental and you don't own a property, check out snowbird.org because it's a really good site. There's also a Canadian Snowbird Association, which has I think it's 100,000 members, something like that. So they're always putting out good material online as well.
Well, that's it for today. We'll have more helpful hints coming your way over the next few weeks. And just a reminder, the markets and financial numbers change frequently. So what we might talk about today could easily change by later today or overnight. So it's always helpful to check in with Dustin, and you can contact Dustin at Mackey Research Capital. Okay, phone number.
780-905-7729.
And email address?
dlamontagne@mackeyresearch.com.
And you can also check out their website too, which is mackeyresearch.com. Thanks for this today. We'll check in with you again soon, okay?
Thanks, Bryn.
Thanks for listening to Making Sense. Have yourself a great day.